Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is your freight secure? The 3 key vulnerabilities in freight operations with my friend Michael Hane. How's it going, Michael?
It's going great, Joe. Glad to be here. Thanks.
So, Michael, could you please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Mike Hane, Director of Product Marketing in the Transportation Management pillar with Descartes Systems Group. So Descartes, we're a global software service provider built on a global logistics network. So meaning that we have connected to hundreds of thousands of supply chain partners, terminals, carriers, government agencies, shippers, carriers, all that sort of thing. We've connected with brokers, and what we do is we make it possible to organize and orchestrate all the supply chain planning and execution that goes on with supply chains globally, all modes, everywhere in the world.
Yep. Before we hit the record button, we were talking about the different pillars that make up Descartes because it's a big company. What are those pillars? How many are there, first off?
So basically, it's about 5 pillars. So we have last mile, local routing, mobile technology. Yeah. So that's a big pillar for us. A lot of work there. Like I said, I work in the transportation management pillar, so that's kind of your traditional TMS, but it's also real-time tracking with like MacroPoint, dock appointment scheduling, carrier vetting, fraud monitoring, those sorts of things. We also have a e-com fulfillment pillar, so we're doing like pick, pack, and ship, and kind of lightweight WMS in that. Not a full traditional like WMS like some of the big guys out there. Then we also have our global trade intelligence. So there's a lot of data on that around the global shipping profile. So it's useful for folks that are freight forwarders that are looking they can sell their services. But we also do things there like denied party screening. Making sure you're running a clean supply chain. You don't have slave labor. You're not buying from a Russian oligarch. Stuff like that. So there's a lot of things. Tariffs. What's the tariff this week? Helping people set up foreign trade zones.
Tariff of the week, of course.
Yeah. So there's been a lot going on in that neck of the woods lately. And then we also have a broker freight forwarder pillar that gets into customs and regulatory compliance as well. And so that's just very focused on the international modes, and air freight, ocean freight, and all that good stuff.
Well, it's interesting because the world has gotten a lot more complex and the expectations are so much higher. And you guys have, we were talking before we hit the record button, I said something about your TMS, which you said it's multiple our TMSs. And because I noticed, I said, oh, 3G, Descartes 3G. I was like, wasn't there? You go, no, we bought them. And so it's not one TMS that you guys have, it's multiple, but it's the recognition that what a freight forwarder might need might be different than what an e-com guy needs. And, everybody has different needs. And I think we all want visibility. We all want, security. And we'll talk about all this in a minute. But the best companies like Descartes, are not one size fits all.
Yeah, that's right. So, and I've, like I said, been doing TMS for a long time. And it's right. There is no one. Everyone used to ask me all the time, "What's the best TMS?" And it's like,
who are you? What are your needs?
There's the right one for you, right? And that's not the same across all. Like everyone says, like, who's the best carrier? And there's no one good answer. It's what you need. So
I agree. I hate it. I hate when they have the best colleges in America. And I always think, well, first off, people are marketing to those, but I think it's also like saying, oh, well, this is the very best girlfriend or the very best wife. You're like, well, everybody's got a little different wants and needs and tastes. And, the college that's 30 minutes from my house, that sounds like a pretty good fit for a lot of people, right? I don't have to go across the country and pay out of state. I hate that kind of thing because I think it's not useful.
yeah. Just to go back real quick. So on the TMSs, right? So we do have 3G TMS, which is multimodal, good for brokers, managed transportation providers, and shippers. Then we have our more like, if you really just are focused on domestic brokerage, you can do Algex. And then we also have our Descartes TM, there's a lot of other things around that, but yeah, it gets into fleet planning along with contract carriage. So, and like you said, our broker forwarded solutions. So there's not really one, TM that we're pushing here.
Yep. And then you mentioned the macro point also. Macro point was the old, it's not old. I know it's been updated. It's not what it once was. I remember the first time somebody said to me, I was at a brokerage, oh, well, we need macro point on this shipment. And I was like, what do you need? They go macro point. And then they described it and they said, the trucker, this is how long ago, the trucker downloads something onto his phone. And I was like, oh, and then what? And then they track, and I was like, oh my god. I told people at parties like how cool this was, and they're like, you can do that. I was like, yeah, yeah, just get the trucker to download it, and we've come a long way since then. But that was prior to anybody saying we can put code into the ELDs because ELDs, while they were out there, they weren't mandated then for hours of
Exactly.
service.
They weren't mandated. Yes, we started on the cell phones, and then yeah, now ELD is definitely preferred, and we also integrate into all the TMS.
But you do it a lot of different ways. I know.
But yeah, but the long tail is still there. So there's plenty of drivers and owner operators or people running, ELDs that are not connected. And there's a lot in the news right now. Like some people are like, maybe they want to go back to paper logs for a bunch of people. So there's always going to be a long line of folks that you got to meet people where they're at.
You might say, I want to track local box trucks who doesn't need an ELD. You might want to track a van, a Econoline van or a Sprinter. A lot of those guys are going to say, I don't have any of that cool tech. I'm a gig economy guy, but we can still track them that way. And I think it's nice to have that option. But I remember that was the first visibility solution I ever heard of, well before. I mean, I'm not disparaging the others, but it was the first one I heard of. And then it just was an avalanche of those that popped out. And I think the key, though, is this is integrated. So when you say you use our 3G TMS or our LJX or Descartes TM or any of our products, MacroPoint is integrated.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's all integrated, especially on top of that global logistics network. So if you want to use, old school EDI, you want API, portals, that's the thing. It's like we're meeting people where they're at, and when you come and you're already connected into that network, right? So a TMS without the connectivity is pretty useless, right? You need to have all your partners connected into it.
So who's your ideal customers? I know there's more than one segment. Give me a few of the segments.
Yeah, so within the transportation management pillar, for sure, we work with enterprise shippers. We work with medium-sized shippers, folks that are going to have multimodal, some complexity, where they're uh, need to look at LTL versus multi-stop truckload. Maybe they're dealing with pool networks, things like that, or even private or dedicated fleet. And then on the brokerage side, we work with startups. I mean, two people in a garage, all the way up to billion-dollar brokerages and all that stuff. So it's very scalable from that aspect, and it can be kind of a one-stop shop, for everything you need. Just connect to the load board, connect to some financials in the back, and run it that way. And then we also get into managed transportation as well on the 3PL side. Again, because of the configurability and easy onboarding of things like that. So it's people that have complexity, I would say, in some aspect of their supply chain, and they're looking for someone that's a solid vendor, and again, who has pre-built all the connections out there. And so you connect into Descartes, and you're connected.
Yep. And Descartes is based in Toronto. And I always say this when I talk to my Canadian friends, of course, doing business throughout North America. And but that might make somebody who has cross border stuff say, "Hey, well, that's even better because they're based in Canada. Clearly, going to have those solutions going to be good." And increasingly, those are going to become really important with the cross border in North America, both U.S., Mexico, Canada.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, cross border is a big part. We've been tracking that in MacroPoint for a long time. There's still some issues there with cargo changes hands so many times, but we feel we're ahead of the game in tracking all that, and I don't see the cross border stuff going down anytime soon. So we're tracking that. We're tied into, I mentioned the connectivity. We get customs data pulled in as well. So we can track that, ocean, air, but also truck from Mexico. So not just where the load is, but what part. So we're pulling in that data, what status is it in? Not just that it's sitting there in the yard.
Going back 10, 15 years ago when I was still moving freight, I would say we have real time visibility. And what I meant by that was within an hour or so. And slowly but surely, you technology guys are going to make us honest. So we're going to say real time visibility is actually real time visibility.
Yeah, exactly. It's all whatever your shipper, requires you to have. That's what it'll end up being. So there have been some mandates out there around visibility and 15-minute updates and temperature monitoring. So yeah.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the juggernaut that is Descartes.
Sure. So I grew up outside Baltimore, Maryland. I went to Virginia Tech. I was actually a
Oh,
business
nice.
major.
That's a great
Yeah,
school.
so I was a Hokie. And then, yeah, after college, I was looking for jobs and wasn't finding, stuff that really spoke to me and the true like business management and finance area. And just so happened my brother was a Georgia Tech PhD industrial engineer, and he was working for a small software company started by some Georgia Tech professors. And he's like, you know how to turn on a computer? We need some warm bodies. So yeah, I started down at Caps Logistics and started routing trash trucks. I thought I'd do that for maybe a summer, and it's like 30 years later, and I'm still in transportation. So I did a stint. So I was at Caps for a while. So implementing routing, transportation, doing network design. So got to cut my teeth on a lot of things. Got into sales and marketing and consulting and all that stuff. And then I was at Chainalytics for about 18 years. So that's where I got most of my experience doing, again, helping people get the value out of all the software they bought in the early 2000s, late 90s. And so did that, and we were doing benchmarking. So DAT bought part of the benchmark. We were doing the rate stuff. So I actually was at DAT for a year, helping them, deliver more for shippers. And yeah, so I've been now with a couple other stops along the way, but been with Descartes over 2 years now. But what's interesting is I've known the Descartes folks for years. Some of the guys I work with now, we were on that first initial project routing trash trucks back in the mid 90s. So yeah, when I was found myself on the market again looking, I just was texting folks and they're like, man, why don't you come over here to Descartes? I was like, yeah, always had a great experience with those guys, great reputation, great tech stack, great customer service. So it was a no brainer for me to join the team.
I say this all the time. There's people like you who would have potentially left the industry, gone somewhere that was more, uh, I don't know, I'll just use the term, none of these quite fit, but more professional, more technical. You got here at the right time where the logistics and supply chain and transportation was saying, hey, we need data, we need intelligence, we need technology that's going to streamline the process. And for a long time, uh, and I'm sure you were part of this, I know I was part of this, I looked at each one of these point solutions and said, oh boy, that's the silver bullet. When I first time I saw a TMS, I was like, oh my God, this solves everything. And it does solves a lot. But what we quickly realized is there's a whole bunch of things that's missing and it needs to be connected to. So we're constantly looking upstream and downstream of our whatever technology we're using. And I think you can see that in what Descartes' growth, because they've made some acquisitions and they've made new additions with their own internal development. And you look and say, yeah, they kind of do everything.
We do a lot, yeah, for global supply chain for sure. It's kind of like the biggest, supply chain solutions company that a lot of people have not heard of. Let's just say that, unless you're a driver and a carrier, then everyone knows us. But yeah, outside of that, it gets a little more sparse.
So before we get into a little bit about the topic today, I had some notes from your go to market team, and it was core focus areas include transportation management. We talked about real time shipment visibility. That's the macro point and beyond. Carrier connectivity and collaboration. What is that?
So that's part of the global logistics network, but also MacroPoint, would fall into that as well. So the carrier connectivity, and again, remember, I myself always fall back to more my domestic and truckload and fleet brain. But we're also talking about global and multimodal, right? So we're talking about booking ocean containers, right? Getting the ocean messaging, air messaging. So I mean, we have sensors, uh, more sensors than anyone else in aircraft worldwide. So there's like things that people just don't know about Descartes. So it is true connectivity, like I said, through the GLN, through the old school EDI, layering on the newer technologies on top of that over the years. But it's truly like if you need to communicate and do business with a carrier or someone in supply chain globally, like we can execute that for you.
Yep.
Right.
And I see last mile delivery. We talked about that. Super important these days. I was talking to somebody about an upcoming conference, and they said it's all home delivery stuff. I was like, don't minimize it. I mean, it's incredibly difficult. And I said, you'd be shocked when you go to one of these conferences how much last mile matters. And I said, and it's harder than traditional logistics. I said, because first off, you got to be there same day, next day, and and you're delivering to a non-professional. You're delivering to a doc. I'm doing air quotes here to a doc that won't answer the door and has a beehive on the porch. Um, um, and by the way, we also touched on global trade research and customs compliance right now with the war going on and still ongoing tariff discussions. That is critically important. And I know a lot of people in the supply chain side that most of us serve, they're very focused on where should I have my stuff being made, manufactured, um, where should it be delivered to, and you need that intelligence and somebody to be 15 minutes ahead of you so you can make the decisions that don't cost your company a fortune because you make a wrong move in the tariff stuff and you're going to step in it.
Yep. No, it's a good point. And it kind of does go across like supply chain planning, procurement, compliance. There's a lot of decisions. And yes, so you're right. A lot of people were kind of scrambling uh, with the tariffs of, where can I source these? I used to buy these cheap scissors from China. Can I get them in Vietnam? Can I get them in India? No, they don't make, what do I have to do now?
Yeah, this tends to get very political, but I'm not particularly political on my podcast or in my real life. But I always feel like, oh, why do we have tariffs? That just raises the cost on us consumers. Having said that, if you start to look at uh, what's strategic, what should we have here in the United States, and I think every country can look at this. There's certain things we think we should have. What we never want to find ourselves in is we are dependent on China for all of our chips. And by the way, they're looking at us and saying we don't want to be dependent on the US for this or that. So under President Biden, we have the CHIPS Act. So we're bringing uh, stuff home. We're going to build chips here. Chips have traditionally been built kind of we always designed here, but manufactured somewhere else. But uh, I see why we want some of those supply chain functions here. Right now, I think 50% of supply chain functions in the world are performed in China. For most stuff, I don't care. But remember during the pandemic when they said, oh, we don't have ventilators that are made in the US. We can't get them here. You're like, wait, what? We don't make any ventilators? Later on, we decided we didn't need the ventilators. But um, now, I think Ford Motor Company quickly said, we'll rally and we'll make some ventilators. Not that hard, but there's certain things we decided, and I think it doesn't matter who the president is. We're gonna have certain manufacturing stuff here. The biggest industries in the world soon to be um, robots, drones, electric vehicles. So, and probably gas vehicles are not going away either. So we know that we want some of that stuff here. So this tariff discussion, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. It's going to be, and that's the same with your Canadian counterparts. We're ultimately going to still be our big trading partners, but there's going to be a little give and take.
We'll see. Yeah. So USMCA comes up this year. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Uh, who knows? I mean, I never like making predictions, but even now it seems even more difficult, the last couple of years to make predictions.
Yeah, it's funny because we made changes last time around to accommodate e-commerce, and then it became kind of like, okay, nobody's paying any money on e-commerce stuff, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, I want to talk about the three key vulnerabilities in freight operations. So the first one, I'll get you started. I wrote it down. It's my tech stack. What is wrong with my tech stack, Michael Hane?
Okay. I don't know that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but yeah, the thing about it
It
is,
could be vulnerable.
yeah, it could be vulnerable. The couple things to look at are, yeah, how many different software components are in part of that tech stack? How are they talking to each other? How old are they, right? So, and what releases are you on? So there's things you have to, when you have a tech stack and you have, multiple solutions in there. Did I customize it? So am I on the latest version at all? Because hopefully your vendor has been updating and protecting that technology, from all the new threats that are out there. So that would be the first thing of understanding: are you on the latest and greatest versions of these things? There's still a lot of legacy TMS that's out there, or even some of our 3PLs. They might have multiple TMSs, right? They get one in, they run it for a couple customers, and it just stays around forever. Um, and they might buy two or three more, but the old one still hangs around. So that's part of it, is just understanding, am I taking advantage of what I already have invested in with my technology partners, but then also the integrations between all those different, so where I have fragmentation, where I have, data getting passed back and forth, are all those vendors still on, are they investing as much into their R&D and into the blocking and tackling, let's say, versus the nice shiny interface and the bells and whistles? So those are things you have to constantly stay on top of, with your technology providers. It's not just like a set and forget. Oh, you're SOC 2? Okay, well, that was 5 years ago. Have we checked on that since? So you got to stay on top of that stuff. Um, yeah, I'm not going to get too technical. I'm not the most technical. I'm like a super user of stuff, right? I'm not going to get into all that sort of thing. But the main concept, right, is understand what you have, understand where the data is getting passed back and forth. Then also understanding how is AI going to get layered into that, and what am I turning over to agentic AI? What is it then going to have access to? To what standards are those people developing that AI? So you got to make sure now, am I exposing, oh, I want to get people off the phone. Let's bring in this AI agent. And now all of a sudden you've got, bank information that's exposed to stuff you didn't even know about.
It's always evolving, and I I'm a podcaster, obviously, so I have audio stuff on my website. Recently, there was some middleware that connected one part of the audio to my website, and WordPress, which is what I use. WordPress said we no longer um, approve of that using that software, so they just basically said gone. Well, now we have to go up and update 500 episodes, and I guess I should be sort of thankful to WordPress that they're saying they don't meet our standard anymore. So we got rid of that connector. But when you think about all the systems, now you guys, I'm not just saying this to be nice. You guys have a whole these systems that are almost from the design up connected, um, as opposed to I bought a TMS and I integrated it to um, my ERP and I integrated that. And sometimes we end up with a whole bunch of integrations or APIs. And I heard this at the cybersecurity conference. Somebody said, it's great that we can connect quickly with APIs, but is it safe? Is there a standard that you've set for the API connection? Are they meeting that? And he said, take an extra day and do it properly. Because when we started connecting and saying, hey, you no longer have to touch the freight, there's a lot of stuff on automatic. we also ended up with a lot more security issues because people realized, hey, I can get a whole bunch of stuff. I might even get paid automatically if I play my cards right. You guys have those all kind of
Right, and the roadmaps are all aligned.
from the ground up.
Right. So when we do an update or we do a new release, like everyone is aware and knows like what's happening. So that's just another flavor of this is, you know, you got different integrations that are built for different versions of different softwares. And yeah, so that's not the case when you have, a single vendor tech stack, at least for most of your stuff, right?
I got to tell you, this shocked me, but I guess when I think about the logic, I get it. The other day, I was watching the All In podcast, great podcast, and they said there's a lot of companies that are going to go back to on premise. They're not going to be in the cloud anymore. And I was like, wait a sec, wait, what? And they were saying, from do I want my information exposed to AI? And I was thinking, you don't have to have it exposed to AI. You don't have to. So they said basically, some of this data starts to become really secure, really important in the security of it. And do I want a third party to be holding it? And I was like, I still am a big believer in the cloud. But I guess my point to bringing this up even is there's always going to be a new transition. There's always going to be an upgrade that we all have to concern ourselves with.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, the way things are going, I mean, the cloud, it's just way easier to connect to all your partners when you embrace the cloud architecture and make sure that it's secure and that you're constantly vigilant in keeping it that way. And yeah, I mean, your point on the AI, yeah, I mean, yeah, are you going to allow the AI to train on your data and what's it going to do? And are you empowering your competitors with stuff if you're all using the same? I mean, there's lots of flavors that go into it.
It's funny. You guys create a lot of content at Descartes, so do I. You create content, and AI grabs it up and says, "Hey, this is part of our super intelligence." I was like, "Well, a little nod to the logistics of logistics, please." We were feeding you, you pig. um, so the second thing I want to talk to you about, and this is another key vulnerability, it's carrier security. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Who would have guessed that carrier security was an issue? So please describe that problem for people who don't get into it day to day.
Right. Yeah. So this is the, I mean, it's been an issue for a while, but it really started kind of at the beginning of the COVID. And there's lots of reasons. I'm not going to get into it, but so there's still the issue of double brokering. There's more of the issue of carrier identity stealing. But then the one of the bigger issues now is just where as capacity is shrinking and some of the smaller carriers are shuttering their doors, or hey, I'm going to go work in a warehouse, I'm not going to drive a truck, and I'll sell these three. But what they figured out is they have this MC number that is an asset, and it's has some value. So that's the thing, is like you don't have to sell your entire business right now. You don't have to sell the all your trailers and your power units and your computers, right? You can just on Facebook, someone will buy your MC number for 10 grand, 20 grand. And I would say maybe a couple of years ago, the guy would like, everyone has to know by now what's being done with these numbers. So basically there's scammers. I mean, these are like corporations now, a lot of them overseas, but their whole business is to scam and to buy these MC numbers, sit on them, and basically, chameleon carriers, what it's called, where they kind of take over and they look like this reputable carrier that's been in operations for who knows how long, but now it's a totally different company, but it looks the same on paper. And then they'll just steal loads, and they'll do that until they get flagged enough times, and then they just retire that MC number, and they got dozens more that they can move on to.
I've seen also the instances where, let's just say you and I, we own five separate entities, and we have 10 trucks. And as one entity's name gets uh, reputational damage or gets enough black marks against it, we take the truck out of that fleet, move it over to the other carrier MC. And so we could be really bad actors, and we have these five entities, and it takes a long time to put it to a stop. And then at some point you go, I'm going to put this in my wife's name, and I'm going to do the same. And it just goes on and on and on. And let's face it, we're all busy. And I want to be able to look at a system and say, that guy's no good to work with. Yet that I don't need any explanations. I don't want to have phone calls. I don't want emails back and forth. That guy's just, and he calls and says, hey, why can't you work with me? Mike, why can't he work with me? Say, hey, go through the system. That's it. I don't care.
Right. So yeah, so Descartes now has my carrier portal as part of our carrier compliance monitoring, carrier vetting and onboarding solution. And my carrier portal has been around for, I think it's got to be 15 years by now. But yeah, so it started kind of more on the insurance monitoring side of things, just making sure things were in compliance from that standpoint and looking at safety. Because I mean, security is big, but also safety is another big issue as well. Like, is this carrier, a hazard on the highways, right? Because there's a lot of new legislation being proposed, but some of it is trying to hold shippers and brokers more accountable for kind of hiring carriers that are not safe. So set aside the freight fraud and theft. There's also, I mean, you see, there's headlines almost every day now of fatality and accident, right? And so they're shutting down the CDL mills. There's all the English language proficiency. There's a lot of other things that are floating around, but so with my carrier portal, right, pulling in the FMCSA data, we've got partnerships with a lot of other folks out there. I know you've had on the podcast. So bringing in those different things, as well as just our network effect of feedback from people, but looking at, what's their insurance rating? I mean, we've seen people now, they're actually standing up fake insurance companies and issuing fake insurance.
Tells you how much money is available.
Yeah, and so like, yeah, so you're a broker and you're just like, well, let me see your insurance policy. Oh, here's my insurance policy. Well, those things are now being faked as well. So we're doing stuff where we're checking with secretaries of state, chambers of commerce. You got to line up all this different data. Like, does the MC line up with the business license that's on file there? Right? Has the phone number been changed in a while? Like, what's the IP address that's pinging? Right? So there's carrier security of vetting, like, who am I talking to? And there's other solutions out there that do this as well. We all have got some differences between us, right? But the next level is also not just verifying the carrier, but also then verifying the driver and who's coming to pick up. So it's that real time thing. So we call it VIN validation in my carrier portal. So if it's someone that's new, or maybe they got a couple flags on them, and you just want to do another, like, okay, get on the phone, talk to them. Like, do they know freight, right? So but then, okay, so let me talk to the driver. Where's the driver at? Oh, he's supposed to be here in 3 hours. Well, where is he? And then, so there's a way we have, with the cell phone, taking pictures, geolocate all that, and understand where they are. Is that VIN associated with that carrier? If not, do they have a lease agreement? Let's look at the insurance. So there's a lot of things we're doing, down to verifying not just that the carrier, it's not good enough to verify the carrier. You have to verify the equipment and the driver as well.
Yes, yes. And again, we love the automation. We're not going back. We want to be able to do stuff with quickly. But when you think about 20 years ago, if I was moving your freight, I would call you and you go, "Oh, I was talking to Joe. I talked to him about the March Madness. We talked about talked about his new dog, whatever." And I know Joe. He's been moving my freight for 5 years. Now we move to technology that allows you not to have to make a whole bunch or take a full bunch of phone calls. We're all for that. But what it opened up is fraud. And I remember years ago talking to Ann Renke. She was at TIA then. Now she's at IANA, Intermodal Association North America. And she said to me, what would you do about freight fraud? And I go, well, first off, I'm all for the technologies. My carrier portal is a great one. But I said, I would pick up the phone and talk to the carriers who move my freight. No, but that's not possible for everybody. If you say I got 10,000 loads this week.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, everything, I've always thought about this in transportation, right? Think of everything as like a portfolio, right? So there's different things. So like, some need that extra attention, some maybe don't. But yeah, so the point is, the technology can help automate the things that are running, but you still need a person in the loop. I mean, you still got to pick up the phone. The technology is not going to fully replace, at least soon, I think, everything. but it can definitely automate the easier stuff. I've been doing this, 5 loads a day with the same guy. Okay, I get it, and nothing's changed. But one day it's like, oh yeah, no, this is Mike. Like Joe's off today. How many loads you got for me? And he's got the right phone number and he's got the right email. But does Mike really work for that carrier? So that
They've gotten very sophisticated in AI. I wish AI would say, no, 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 we're on the good guys team. We're not going to help you do bad things. but but AI is very easy that way. It'll work with whoever. And I said this before we hit the record button. I think uh, hygiene is super important in companies, and that means that when you get that email that's a little sketchy, that you report it to your guys, block it, whatever you need to do. And also, when somebody quits or gets fired, you get their email and their user information out of your system. Um, I'm a big proponent right now of leaning towards, I should say, working with the bigger companies who can invest in the constant updates that are required. So every once in a while, I'll talk to a smaller technology company, and they go, "Well, the old systems are built on the old technology." I was like, "Yeah, but you don't think they're standing still, do you?" Not like Descartes said, "Hey, we invented this TMS in 1984, and we really love it, so we never changed it." Like there's like 6 iterations every.
Yeah, yeah, we're constantly redeveloping and upgrading everything. But we have all that, the experience. And yeah, I mean, EDI is still around. So yeah, we do EDI, right? So there's stuff like that's gonna stick around. But to your point about the hygiene, um, one of our I was just talking to a customer of ours, and yeah, one of the things they do is so they're a broker, right? They're onboarding hundreds of carriers a week, right? And they might do a load with a carrier and never see him again or something like that. So every three, they do a thing where if you haven't hauled with us in 3 months, they zero you out and then you have to go through the My Carrier portal vetting again. So they're constantly just keeping their carrier. So it's not like I've got 20,000, carriers in my network. Okay, but when's the last time you talked to anyone over there? So there's things like that people are doing that are on the operational side with the technology. So it's about those, your SOPs, right? As much as the tech itself, because the tech is great, but once you onboard them and you vet them, there's you don't have to go through that same if you don't want to, right? But hopefully you have this kind of like zero trust or very little trust, methodology.
Yes, there's that old saying. Uh, I think it was an old Russian saying that Ronald Reagan kind of brought it up a long time ago, and he said, "Trust but verify." And one of the zero trust guys said, "No, not trust but verify. Verify then trust." I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, Gipper. Verify but trust." I'm looking for you just mentioned kind of being able to identify the driver. I look forward to the time when a driver gets there and somebody's able to say, quickly using technology. That's the proper truck. That's the proper. I've got a picture of what Joe looks like, and I see that here. Yep, that's the driver, and maybe even a phone where it says yes, and that's Joe's. That is the proper phone number. If I call Joe, he answers that phone. Get to the place where you go, I'm never giving the freight. And everyone paid attention to Guy Fieri and Sammy Hagar. They had $1 million worth of tequila stolen, and the drivers never knew they did anything wrong. They picked it up, they delivered it to where they're supposed to deliver it, which was probably some fraudulent warehouse. And when the police got there, they were gone. So was the $1 million worth of tequila.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, sometimes for some of these sophisticated scams, yeah, the guy hauling the freight doesn't know that they're being sent to the wrong location. And I've again heard, because we've got ways to kind of tell if with our macro point fraud guard, right? We're also looking at suspicious pings. So people are spoofing location tracking now as well. So you can, make it look like what I mean. People did this for a while. They were like, okay, I told you I was going to send this truckload, but I'm going to put it on the rails, right? Something like that. Like there's nothing nefarious. A guy's just trying to get a little more margin. but all of a sudden you can see like, wait, why is this thing going on the rails now? So now you can, or I'm running behind. I don't want the shipper to yell at me, all this stuff. So I'll just hide that I'm running behind. And there's apps out there now that can spoof location data. So we've got ways to, verify that and look for suspicious activity on those things. But yeah, if something looks off, I've even heard where the dispatch will call the driver and they're saying, "Hey, you're going to the wrong place. Like you're being used." And the driver's like, "How do I know you're the right guy? Like I got this load from this guy." Like, yeah. So
We got to let the
literally,
drivers drive and take them out of some of this mess.
yeah, the shipper, the broker are talking to the driver like, "Please do not take this load there."
I heard somebody say this last summer before last, and he said um, there was a shipper that said, "Hey, we get." They went on one. I don't know if it's a load board or a broker. Somehow they got on, and 6 trucks came to pick up the freight. And he's like, "What are you here for? Pick up your stuff." And they're like, "Yeah, pick up your stuff." And you're like, "Wait, one of you, one of you is legit, and the other 5." And by the way, they're somewhat unwitting. Maybe some of them are in on it. Some are saying, "Hey, this was a legitimate load. They said come pick it up."
Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, to your point earlier, I mean, some folks are already doing the not necessarily the facial recognition, but yeah, the driver comes in, they want to scan their driver's license. So facial recognition is part of the solutions that are out there. We're right now going through looking for our own, like what we're going to use, like the TSA users or stuff like that. But
You're either going to make it or buy it. I know how you guys are.
but yeah, but checking, yes. But we tell the shippers all the time, like, go outside and check the truck, right? Like, look at what it says on there. Is something taped on it? Does it look like it's been sprayed with a marker, right? Do the hinges, and the look like they've been messed with, So there's a lot of other things, people just taking 3 pallets off the tail, right? There's stuff like that that goes on too. That's not just so yeah.
I saw that. Oh, I forget the name of it. Smart Light or something, where the windshield repair company, and they say, "Yes, I got Michael Hane coming to fix your windshield," and they'll send you a picture and it's basically an app. And so now when you knock on the door, you go, "Yeah, that's the guy," and this is legit. I'm sure we're going to get there very quickly if we're not already there.
Yeah, I think so.
And you mentioned we're talking about carrier security. I'll go one step further, and I know you guys are working on this too. A driver security. We have now people who are tracking freight right from the port and say those are X boxes and we need to get them, and they'll wait maybe for that train stop somewhere in the middle of Nebraska and they'll steal it, or they wait till it gets to a warehouse somewhere, and they'll follow truck drivers for hundreds of miles, from what I understand. Which I was like, that's a lot of work for. Might as well get a real job. And then when the driver gets out to go have a bite to eat, take a rest, they're breaking into these trucks. And I know that's going to happen with pharmaceuticals, it's going to happen with electronics and all the other high value stuff. So we have to help our drivers have to be safe to be able to do their job. Um, and I feel like driver security, freight security, the truck, all of it is all kind of intermingled.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, we have solutions like that as well that tell, where there's like high risk areas, like don't stop here,
I
go
like
outside.
it.
Yeah,
I
so you
like
can,
it.
yeah. So there's things like that. I mean, a lot of people also, they're starting to put more trackers inside the load, right? So you can yeah, so you can tell if, if the door was opened, right? And the thing is too, but the scammers are they're getting more sophisticated as well. So you need multiple of those now too, because they'll know to look for the one in the tail, right? And they'll like throw that one away. But you gotta have multiple of them now. But you can track them all the way back to the warehouse and get the Nikes back. Uh, I was on a session with one of the railroad guys, and they're just getting hammered, in California in the rail yard. Yeah.
Flagging those things. I was at the Port of Long Beach, and somebody said to me, they're flagging this stuff here at the port. Maybe they get an insider, some drayage guy, whatever it is. That all it takes is one bad apple. But it's gotten crazy. I don't know, last year sometime I interviewed Danielle Spinelli about my carrier portal. Now Danielle's moved on to Genlogs, good for her, but she did a webinar with you guys did a webinar last year with the California Highway Patrol on uh, the cargo theft, and I think, am I right to say 70% of it kind of is California? It's such a big vector, and that's where so much of our freight comes from.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the exact, but it's yeah, California, Texas, Florida, I think are some
Yeah.
of the are
Well,
the
those are the
biggest
biggest
ones.
states too. They're
Yeah,
big
and
freight states.
yeah, it's the cargo theft task force that has all of I think 3 officers for all of Southern California. Yeah, so it's a huge yeah. So I was part of that webinar and planning for it. I also on this session that I did with the rail guy, we had one of the deputy district attorneys in Arizona, right? I mean, so that's the thing. These people are over. It's an issue, but that she was talking to her, and she's just like, yeah, well, I got human trafficking. I've got drugs coming over. So yeah, so yes, it's. I'm sorry you lost your load of soda or stuff, but yeah, I've got a lot of, and so there's a lot of reasons why cargo theft.
The very nature of it is difficult. And so you say, "Hey, I have a truckload that was stolen," and they go, "Well, where was it stolen?" You go, "I don't know, somewhere between Iowa and New York." Well, where is it now? I don't know. And you start asking people. So what do you call every police station between now and there? Um, it's difficult, and I think we would love the feds to step up, because I think the purpose of your webinar was to say this is no longer just um, what do they call it? Incidental, opportunistic. I'm sorry, it's not just opportunistic theft where Joe and Mike are walking by and go, "Hey, I wonder if there's Xboxes in there. Let's pry it open and see." Oh, no, it's just sheet metal. Screw it. Um, we're gonna Now it is. We know that truck has pharmaceuticals that we want to get out, and uh, those are growing, and I think the cartels are now involved. Obviously, this is stuff that makes a lot of sense to move cross border. Yeah, a friend of mine called me. I don't know, it was 6 months ago, and he said something like, "Oh, I got this good deal. I think it was like linens, and he just bought a house." And he goes, "Is it about these linens? There's a whole pallet." I go, "On Facebook Marketplace?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "That's stolen." And he goes, "Why would you say that?" I go, "Who's selling a pallet? Who buys a pallet other than a store?" And he goes, "Oh, that's a good point." I was like, "That is supposed to be at Target somewhere." And he goes, "Oh, wow, I never thought of it." And I think Danielle showed me a picture that you guys had for your webinar, an entire warehouse filled with stolen stuff. And I think the guys who were arrested didn't get very much time. So we have to catch up with the severity and the problem of the cargo theft and carrier security, cybersecurity. It's all very related. Yeah, scary times. Um, anyway, the last vulnerability is what?
Operational and network security.
Oh, please explain.
Yeah. So touch on a little bit, but so the connectivity, we talked a little bit about the APIs, but the other thing I would talk about here is, um, you know, those those operating procedures that you have as well. So automation is good, but understanding when you need to step in to, take something offline and look at it further, as we said.
We used to call those business rules.
Yeah, the business rules, exactly. So we're not to the fully automated place where we can just turn everything over to AI to find all the bugs with us. But the point of this one, I think we touched on a little bit, but also the partners that you're using, right? So I'm a shipper and I'm getting my goods in and I'm using this freight broker or stuff like that. Like, do they have two-factor authentication? Like, what are they doing? So if they get a Trojan horse or ransomware, now all of a sudden like I'm affected because the supplier that I use, doesn't have. So it's understanding, like we said, not just that, I'm not using their TMS. I'm not, but understanding, like, do you have 2FA? Do you, how do you vet the other people you work with? Are you training your employees to be on the lookout for phishing emails. I mean, we do that at Descartes all the time. I get an email about like, oh, we're changing, the vacation, the holiday procedure or whatever, click here to do a thing. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I know what you're trying to do.
They're trying to
Yeah.
trick you.
So training on all that stuff. But yeah, understanding. I mean, we know there's TMSs have been brought down. Logistic service providers have been brought down, and everything was fine in your network, but you know for a shipment to get from here to there, there's, I don't know, dozens of companies that are involved typically, especially in international. So you got to know all those different parts or have an understanding at least of what they are. And like we said, anytime automation is involved, that's an insertion point for someone to, maybe try to inject and get at the data or get information they might not have, right? So there's things around like just not providing the pickup detail on the load, in the rate con, like until you get that VIN verification and things like that, right? So those are things we've implemented just in the past few years as these things move on. It's like, okay, well, here's the rate con, but yeah, we've now made these fields, we're not going to show that to you until 2 hours before. We're not going to show that to you 5 hours before. And let's keep going through the vetting. So we're not slowing things down, but now once we did the vetting, now we can say, okay, now here's the pickup, here's the load ID, the pickup number, all that stuff. So those are things we've been putting into place, and so that's really what we need. It's like the operation, it's the processes as well as the technology.
Yep. And I think you didn't mention it, but I will. Uh, Almost anybody can be hacked at this point. We've seen top companies. I think a few years ago there was I think it was a vulnerability. I forgot what it was called, but knocked out the airlines for a day and Microsoft. And this wasn't even a hack, but it shows just the nature of these very connected systems and the importance of recovery. So I think anytime you talk about operational network security, like Descartes has, they also will say, yes, if you do get hacked, we're going to have you back running in a half an hour with minimal loss, and we're going to be able to partition off the majority of the stuff. That is where I think the difference between sophisticated larger company thought processes versus again, I'm not against any of the small guys. Nobody send me nasty messages, but when you're brand new and you say, hey, we just got a round of funding and we're going to build this and this, you're not focused on the security of the Fortune 500 companies you serve because you don't serve them yet. Descartes' different because they're working with the biggest shippers and the biggest 3PLs in the world and the biggest carriers. They're focused on no loss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as a public company, yeah, we answer to
Oh
a
yeah, the
lot
bar
of
is higher there.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I get it, and I've worked at small companies. There's the move fast and break stuff versus we have the first do no harm kind of mentality, especially with like releases, like you said. So because that one that when the thing that took down, it was an update, right? And so yeah, even just like updating, like we're very specific on how we make sure we're not going to like boil the ocean on a release, right? Like release, different stages to make sure, we're not, like I said, do no harm, even when we're making improvements.
Well, I would say if you think about, I'm from automotive, 5% of revenue is the logistics spend. For most business, I think it's 10%. Automotive is very optimized. And I think if you get into e-commerce, it's about 20% of spend. But so if you go to someone and say, hey, you're spending 6% of your revenue on this, I can do this, and this, and you can save 30%. Well, it's not, all you've done is move me from 6% to 4%. It's big, but logistics is the tail, not the dog of these businesses. So um, when you're working with the biggest of the big, like you guys work with, um, stability, safety. Let's be measured. Let's have best practices. No, none of the mentality of moving fast and breaking things. Moving fast, but never breaking anything. And last time I talked with you guys, I talked to Dan Cicerci from who was one of the founders of MacroPoint that you guys bought, and he's talked about your AI strategy? And he said, yeah, we're big in AI, but we're using it internally mostly right now. We're using it to do things, but we're never going to roll it out to our customers until we can say we are really knowledgeable of the potential here, but also the downsides. Because he said it would be dishonest to say, hey, yes, we're AI. We're going to change it to Descartes.ai and take a whole bunch of risk. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not the way we do things. So yeah, we have our so within MacroPoint just on that we have Ops Force AI. So we do have a team of agents that are helping um, with that tracking, right? So even like if you're ELD, right, we've got people that are tracking 95, 96%, right? But that for some of these big guys, that still means that's a lot of, numbers of loads that aren't tracking. So, looking at, calling, hey driver, you haven't installed the app yet. You got a load tomorrow. Like, do you need help installing the app? Or you were tracking, but now things stopped tracking. Like, what's going on? We were supposed to see a proof of delivery. It didn't come through. Can you make sure you upload that? So we've released our Ops Force AI, but again, it's really we're focused in this on automating manual tasks that really don't add a lot of value. It takes up a lot of time, but you can free up other people. And we'll be layering in more AI as we do it. But we didn't want to jump in with like AI making big decisions, for you right away. Like AI improves every week, and so let's not go jump headfirst into the AI pool of turning a lot of things over to it.
Am I right to say you guys, do you have an, I seem to remember somebody saying that you guys could integrate to an ELD using AI now, AI guide, and that
Well, it is self-service. Yeah. So
and I remember they said that there was higher satisfaction with that. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but if you're doing it at 10 o'clock at night, you're like, I would like to call and somebody, but I'm trying to connect it right now. And they said that pretty good success so far.
it's super easy. I mean, we've had that even I don't yeah, even before technically the agentic AI. But yeah, no, we're connected into so many different ones. Yeah, the self-service ELD, just yeah, you go right in. So just the broker sends them a link. It can be all
Oh, I used a customer service for I wear a Whoop, and I was wearing my Whoop, and my readings were off, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And so I'm just on my phone saying, hey, and and I didn't even realize it. I'm having this back and forth message. I was thinking I was searching, but it was more of a conversation. I was like, oh boy, that was just easy how I just slid into that. Anyway, I'm going to summarize what we talked about. Well, one last thing before we summarize. If somebody's listening and they say, yes, 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 I would like to work with you guys, what does that look like? I mean, what is that process? Not the sales piece, but when they say, yes, let's do this, what does that look like?
right. So I mean, first of all, we want to understand their business and what their goals are and what they want to do, right? And so let's put some parameters around what are we doing? Are you a broker? Are you a shipper? What modes? What geographies? What do you really need? Do you need just visibility? You're happy with your TMS? Do you need TMS? Do you need carrier vetting? So that's what we want to understand is what are their business problems, their goals, and let's develop a plan to have a long, successful relationship. And that's what we're focused on. Is it's not over when we sell a solution to someone. That's just when it's starting.
It's and I know people don't like the sound of this so much, but if it's easy, you don't mind. It's kind of the never-ending implementation because there's always, if you're working with Descartes, there's always another thing that they're developing or that you aren't currently using. You say, how about next quarter we get the rest of this?
Well, that's yeah. And so, like when we work with smaller folks out there, small brokers or even small shippers, right? They only have to use a portion of the solution, right? And they can just okay, I'm going to do this for now, and then a year from now, hey, I want to add Dre, or I want to add managed transportation. I want to set up a pool network. And so, okay, let's talk about that. What does that look like? So you can, or do you want to let's do everything right now? You're a $1 billion, shipper or broker. So we can tune it any way you want it.
I like it. I like it. So I'm going to summarize, then I want your final thoughts on the topic. Well, we covered a lot of ground, so I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm talking to my friend Michael Hane, and today's topic is your freight secure? The three key vulnerabilities in freight operations. So first, we talked a little bit about kind of the pillars that make up Descartes, the juggernaut. And it's last mile. We didn't get into that too much today. It's a whole topic all by itself, but super important. If you're doing last mile, you guys can help. We talked about the transportation management systems, and it's not just one. You guys, 3G, Aljex, Descartes, TM. It's not one size fits all there. We also another piece of that is always going to be the macro point or the dock scheduling. Super important parts of those tools. Separate solution for the e-commerce, and it needs a separate solution. It's a very different business, and that's kind of a WMS light. We also talked about global trade intelligence. So we are right now in a need of global trade intelligence because we're not allowed to trade with a lot of companies, but on top of that, we're not allowed to ship to a lot of locations. And I'll tell you the reputational damage that can come from, and not only the government punishment, no government wants you doing business with certain regions or with certain companies. And I'm telling you, you'll never live it down if you're the company that shipped product to a terrorist organization. It's just nobody needs that. And that's where the global trade intelligence, but it's not just that. Um, what should I buy and where should I buy it? And I need to be able to see around the next corner, and that is not easy right now. Uh, Last but not least, we talked about the software you guys have for the brokers and freight forwarders. So your customers are shippers, big shippers, enterprise shippers, but also the medium-sized shippers, especially ones who are multi-mode. Um, Also with brokers, and anybody who's got a lot of complexity, you guys can accommodate that. Um, so we talked. I should also say some of the core areas here: real-time shipment visibility, macro point, kind of being the OG of visibility, but also they didn't rest on their laurels. They have come a long way since downloaded on your phone. Now they can do anything. Carry connectivity and collaboration, global trade. Uh, oh, uh, Transportation rating, payment, and regulatory process. We didn't talk about that. Super important. We also talked about these vulnerabilities today. So the first vulnerability was your freight tech stack. It could have issues, and we won't get into all the details, but basically, fragmented aging systems and update that get missed. We tend to have, unless you go with somebody who's got a kind of an end-to-end solution like Descartes, a whole bunch of interconnected systems with sometimes one update blows that integration. Sometimes there's a lot of acquisitions in the space, and you find out that, oh, that doesn't work the same way since they got bought. You gotta you have potential risk and vulnerability in your tech stack, and um, that isn't going away. Next, we talk about carrier security. I think we could say carrier security, driver security, freight security. All of it is a issue. Identity theft, double brokering, fraud, uh, impersonation, phishing. There's uh, oh, uh, it's kind of never ending. I want to make sure we talk about one thing before we wrap this bad boy up. Um, Last but not least, we talked about operational and network security. That's beyond API. This is the big boy stuff. This is where you belong. To make sure that you have the data and the connectivity and the automation you need. And then if, God forbid, you do have a problem, you got recovery on your side. One other thing, Michael, we talked before we hit record, you have a case study. Vesta Freight strengthens customer service and freight security with Descartes 3G TMS. Um, I'm going to make sure we put a link to that webinar, or is it a case study?
It's a case study. So there's a video. So I'm actually on the other side of the camera asking the questions. But we talked to the founder, the CEO, talked to people in the accounting group, talked to operations. So I really tried to build like a 360 view of the different things. So there's shorter clips in there, but yeah, it is just a case study. But they're great. Started started in the pandemic, so they had to be lean and know what they're doing right out of the gate, and they've grown a lot. and they've embraced, the Descartes platform. And
Yeah, it should mention they're using your 3G TMS, MacroPoint, and My Carrier Portal. So these again is a suite of tools. I joke about it. When you look at the big shippers, they say we want flow, and what our community answered with was, how about a whole bunch of silos? Would that be good? And until companies like Descartes still started building end-to-end solutions, there was a lot of we have 5 systems to facilitate the flow, and it kind of defeats the whole idea of streamlining. Anyway, put a big old bow on this one. Final thoughts on the topic, Michael Hane.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Well, Joe, it was great talking to you today. I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, I just like to leave people today with, at Descartes, we've been in business a long time. We're constantly innovating and investing in the technology. We've got people here that know transportation, know the shipper space, the brokerage space, the 3PL space. And we've developed everything on top of this network, right? The global logistics network, like I said, has been around since the 80s, right? Some of this old school tech, but we've been layering that connectivity and all the new capabilities on top of that. So if folks are looking for, TMS, if they're looking for visibility, carrier vetting, monitoring, dock appointment scheduling, all that stuff, I mean, come and talk to us. If we're a fit, that's great. If we're not, we'll let you know. But we're very pragmatic here. We're in the business to build long-term partnerships with folks. And like I said, we just had our financials announced. So we're $729 million company, publicly traded, and we work with folks globally. So when you come in with us, like I said, you might just need one little thing of visibility, but then, hey, I want to understand free trade zones, or maybe I need to get into e-com fulfillment now, or what am I doing for people are asking me about parcel shipping now, that hadn't happened before. So if you're shipping it globally, we can help you.
Yep. And I think we should note that you guys are traded both in Toronto and New York, and publicly traded companies have a higher bar for disclosure and for doing the right things because they're publicly traded. So, and the reason I say that is because I believe right now we have so many technologies, and some of them worry me because bombastic claims that again, the move fast and break things. That's not, that might be fine for a small company, but there tends to be
yeah. Well, we have to be
no
careful.
boundary.
Yeah, we have to be careful with forward-looking statements. That's for sure. Being publicly traded, so yeah, we got to be careful of overpromising, and then.
Yep, Michael. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website. I'll make a link to the case study we just described. I'll also make a link to. I interviewed Dan Cicerci from Descartes, and last year I talked to Danielle about your webinar you guys did last year with the California Highway Patrol. So anyway, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to the Logistics of Logistics. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.